The morning sun cast long shadows across the hospital corridor as William Matthews adjusted his tie for the third time. His hands trembled slightly, betraying the composed exterior he desperately tried to maintain. After 28 years of dedicated service as head nurse at St. Mary's Children's Hospital, today marked his final shift. The decision hadn't been easy, but at 62, William felt the weight of decades spent caring for others pressing down on his shoulders. Kate Sullivan watched from across the nurses' station, her heart heavy with the knowledge that her mentor and closest colleague would soon walk out those doors forever. She had been William's student once, a nervous 22-year-old fresh out of nursing school, terrified of making mistakes that could cost lives. Now, at 35, she served as the hospital's deputy head nurse, a position she owed entirely to William's patient guidance and unwavering belief in her abilities. The pediatric ward buzzed with its usual morning activity. Children's laughter mixed with concerned whispers from parents, while medical staff moved with practiced efficiency between rooms. William had seen thousands of young patients come through these halls, each one leaving an indelible mark on his heart, from premature babies fighting for their first breaths to teenagers battling cancer with remarkable courage. He had witnessed the full spectrum of human resilience. Kate remembered her first day working alongside William. She had accidentally dropped a tray of medications, the sound echoing through the ward like a gunshot. Other nurses had rushed to help clean up the mess, some shaking their heads in disapproval. But William had simply knelt beside her, helping to collect the scattered pills while speaking in his characteristic gentle tone. "Mistakes happen to all of us," he had said. "What matters is how we learn from them and move forward." That philosophy had become the cornerstone of William's approach to both nursing and mentoring. He never raised his voice, never made anyone feel small for their errors. Instead, he created an environment where learning flourished and compassion reigned supreme. Young nurses sought him out for advice, knowing they would receive honest guidance wrapped in kindness. The news of William's retirement had spread through the hospital like wildfire 3 months earlier. Staff members from every department had approached Kate, asking about plans for a farewell celebration. The administration wanted to organize a formal ceremony in the hospital's main auditorium, complete with speeches and presentations. Local news outlets had even expressed interest in covering the story of the beloved nurse who had touched so many lives. But William had politely declined all grand gestures. "I don't need fanfare," he had told Kate during one of their quiet conversations in the break room. "The work we do here isn't about recognition or applause. It's about the difference we make in people's lives when they need us most." His humility was genuine, born from a deep understanding that healthcare was a calling rather than a career. Kate understood his perspective, but she also knew that William's colleagues needed a way to express their gratitude and say goodbye properly. She began quietly organizing something more intimate, reaching out to former patients' families, retired staff members, and current colleagues who had been touched by William's presence over the years. The response overwhelmed her. Email after email poured in from families whose children had been under William's care. Parents shared stories of how his gentle words had comforted them during their darkest hours, how his expertise had made the difference between despair and hope. Former colleagues, now scattered across the country, sent messages recounting moments when William's wisdom had guided them through difficult situations. One letter particularly moved Kate. It came from Maria Santos, whose premature daughter had spent 3 months in the neonatal intensive care unit 15 years earlier. "Mr. Williams saved my sanity during the worst time of my life," she wrote. "Every day for 3 months he would update me on Sophia's progress, explain every procedure, and never once made me feel like my questions were foolish. When Sophia finally came home, he cried with us. That's the kind of nurse he is. Someone who genuinely cares about the whole family, not just the patient." As Kate read through dozens of similar testimonials, she realized that organizing a proper farewell wasn't just about honoring William's career. It was about acknowledging the ripple effect of kindness and compassion that had spread far beyond the hospital walls. Families had been forever changed by their interactions with him, and many had gone on to volunteer at children's hospitals or pursue careers in healthcare themselves, inspired by his example. The weight of this realization settled on Kate's shoulders as she watched William make his morning rounds. He moved from room to room with the same careful attention he had always given, checking on patients, consulting with doctors, and offering comfort to worried parents. Nothing in his demeanor suggested that this was his final day. He remained fully present and engaged, as if each moment mattered as much as any other in his long career. Dr. Patricia Chen, the hospital's chief of pediatrics, had worked alongside William for over a decade. She often said that he possessed an almost supernatural ability to sense when a child was in distress, even before monitors began beeping or symptoms became obvious. William doesn't just treat patients, she had once observed.
He has this gift for seeing the person behind the illness,
for understanding what each child needs beyond medical intervention. That gift had been evident just the previous week, when 8-year-old Tommy Rodriguez was admitted with severe asthma complications. The boy was frightened and uncooperative, pulling away from medical staff and refusing to use his inhaler properly. Other nurses had struggled to calm him, but William had sat quietly beside Tommy's bed and begun talking about baseball, somehow knowing that the child was a huge fan of the local team. Within minutes, Tommy was relaxed and cooperating with treatment. William had not only helped the boy medically, but had also taught his parents techniques for managing his anxiety around medical procedures. It was this combination of clinical excellence and emotional intelligence that had made William irreplaceable in the eyes of his colleagues. As the morning progressed, Kate found herself memorizing details she had never paid attention to before. The way William hummed softly while reviewing charts, his habit of keeping small toys in his pocket for anxious children, the gentle way he knocked on doors before entering patient rooms. These small gestures, repeated thousands of times over nearly 3 decades, had become the foundation of his legendary reputation. The clock on the wall ticked steadily toward noon, each minute bringing them closer to a goodbye that Kate wasn't ready to face. By afternoon, word had quietly spread that today was indeed William's last day. Despite his preference for no formal celebration, small gestures of appreciation began appearing throughout the ward. A homemade card from 7-year-old Emma, who had been William's patient during her leukemia treatment, sat propped against his computer monitor. The crayon drawing showed a stick figure in scrubs with an enormous smile, surrounded by hearts and the words, "Thank you for making me brave." Kate noticed how William's eyes lingered on the card longer than usual, his professional composure momentarily softening. She knew he kept similar mementos from former patients in a box at home, treasures that reminded him why he had chosen this demanding profession. Each drawing, each thank you note represented a life touched, a family comforted, a child helped to heal. The afternoon brought its usual challenges. 3-year-old Marcus had been admitted with a severe allergic reaction, and his parents were beside themselves with worry. William took charge of the situation with his characteristic calm efficiency, explaining each step of the treatment to the frightened parents while ensuring Marcus felt safe and secure. He transformed what could have been a traumatic experience into something manageable, even speaking to Marcus in simple terms about how the medicine would help his body feel better. "He's like magic with scared kids," whispered Dr. Jennifer Walsh, a pediatric resident who had learned much of her bedside manner by observing William. "I've watched him turn a screaming, terrified child into someone who actually looks forward to their treatments." "It's not something you can teach from textbooks," Kate agreed, remembering countless similar scenes over the years. William had an intuitive understanding of child psychology that went far beyond his formal training. He knew exactly when to be playful and when to be serious, when to offer distraction and when to acknowledge a child's fears directly. Parents often requested him specifically, even if it meant waiting longer for procedures. As the day wore on, more colleagues began finding excuses to visit the pediatric ward. Maintenance staff who rarely ventured upstairs appeared to check on equipment that was working perfectly fine. Cafeteria workers brought special treats, claiming they had made too much food. Even the hospital's usually stern security chief, Mr. Johnson, stopped by to shake William's hand and thank him for years of kind treatment whenever security assistance was needed in the ward. The most surprising visitor was Mrs. Eleanor Hayes, the hospital's board chairwoman, who arrived unannounced around 3 o'clock. Known for her formal demeanor and business-focused approach, she rarely interacted directly with nursing staff. But she sought out William specifically, asking to speak with him privately. Kate watched through the glass partition as the two sat in the family consultation room. Mrs. Hayes was animated in a way Kate had never seen before, gesturing expressively as she spoke. William listened with his typical attentive manner, occasionally nodding or asking questions. When they emerged 20 minutes later, both had suspiciously bright eyes. Later, Kate learned that Mrs. Hayes had shared a deeply personal story. Her own grandson had been treated at St. Mary's 5 years earlier for a rare genetic condition. She had been impressed by the medical care but had been particularly moved by William's treatment of her daughter, who had been struggling with guilt and depression related to passing on the genetic mutation. "He didn't just care for my grandson," Mrs. Hayes had told William. "He helped my daughter understand that she wasn't responsible for her son's condition, that genetics isn't about blame, but about knowledge that helps us move forward. His compassion probably prevented my daughter from needing professional mental health intervention. Our family will never forget what he did for us during that difficult time," the revelation explained. Mrs. Hayes is usually generous, support for the pediatric ward's funding, requests, and her particular interest in nursing education programs. William's influence had reached even the hospital's highest levels, though he remained characteristically modest about the impact of his work. As evening approached, Kate began to worry about how she would cope without William's steady presence. He had been more than a colleague. He had been her professional conscience, the person she turned to when difficult decisions arose. His wisdom extended far beyond medical knowledge to encompass the complex emotional and ethical challenges that arose in pediatric healthcare. She remembered a particularly difficult case from 2 years earlier. A terminally ill 12-year-old named Alex had been admitted for palliative care. His parents were struggling with whether to continue aggressive treatments or focus on comfort measures. The medical team was divided, with some advocating for continued intervention and others recommending hospice care. William had spent hours with Alex's family, not pushing them toward any particular decision, but helping them understand their options and their son's perspective. He had facilitated conversations between Alex and his parents that allowed the boy to express his own wishes about his care. Ultimately, the family chose comfort measures, and Alex spent his final weeks pain-free, surrounded by loved ones rather than connected to machines. "The hardest part of our job isn't dealing with medical complications," William had told Kate afterward. "It's helping families navigate the impossible decisions that come with serious illness. Sometimes the most compassionate thing we can do is help people face difficult truths with dignity and love." That philosophy had guided Kate through numerous challenging situations since then. She wondered how she would handle similar cases without William's quiet wisdom to draw upon. The thought of making those difficult judgment calls alone seemed overwhelming. Dr. Chen appeared at Kate's side, interrupting her worried thoughts. "He trained you well," she said, as if reading Kate's mind. "William wouldn't be leaving if he didn't believe you were ready to carry on his work. Trust in what he's taught you." The words were comforting, but Kate still felt the weight of responsibility settling on her shoulders. She would be stepping into William's role officially within the week, taking on administrative duties that would pull her away from direct patient care. The thought of spending more time with spreadsheets and staffing schedules instead of comforting frightened children and their families seemed like a betrayal of everything William had taught her about nursing. As if sensing her internal struggle, William approached with 2 cups of coffee from the break room. It was a ritual they had shared countless times over the years, taking a few minutes to debrief about difficult cases or simply check in with each other during hectic shifts. "Penny for your thoughts," he said, settling into the chair beside her at the nurse's station. The familiar warmth in his voice reminded Kate of all the times he had offered this same gentle invitation to share whatever was troubling her. Kate wrapped her hands around the warm coffee mug, gathering her thoughts before speaking. "I keep thinking about all the families we won't help together anymore," she finally admitted. "All the scared kids who won't get to meet you, who'll have to settle for someone like me instead." William's gentle laugh surprised her. "Someone like you?"
Kate, do you have any idea how many nurses have told me they want to be someone like you when they grow up professionally?
"You've become exactly the kind of nurse this hospital needs leading the next generation." She shook her head, still doubting her readiness for the responsibilities ahead. "But what about cases like the Morrison family last month? I never would have known to connect them with that support group for parents of children with autism. Or Mrs. Chen's daughter, I wouldn't have thought to arrange for that therapy dog visit that helped her overcome her fear of medical procedures. You're giving me too much credit, William replied, his voice carrying the patient tone he used when correcting a fundamental misunderstanding. Those weren't special insights I was born with. They came from years of listening to families, learning what worked and what didn't, and building relationships with resources throughout the community. You'll develop those same connections and instincts over time. The conversation was interrupted by the arrival of David and Susan Martinez, whose 8-year-old son Miguel had been one of William's patients during a lengthy battle with childhood diabetes. They carried a large manila envelope and wore the slightly nervous expressions of people who weren't sure if their gesture would be welcomed. "Mr. William," Susan called softly, approaching the nurse's station with obvious emotion. "We heard today was your last day. We couldn't let you leave without giving you this." David opened the envelope carefully, revealing a beautifully crafted photo album. The cover was embossed with the words, "Thank you," in elegant script, and inside were dozens of pictures chronicling Miguel's journey from diagnosis to his current healthy, active lifestyle. "Miguel is playing soccer now," Susan explained, tears beginning to form in her eyes. "He's the team captain and he never misses practice. None of that would have been possible without you teaching us how to manage his condition properly. You didn't just save our son's health, you saved our family from falling apart under the stress." William accepted the album with visible emotion, carefully turning through pages that showed Miguel's progression from a frightened, sick child to a confident, thriving boy. There were pictures of birthday parties, school events, and family vacations, all the normal childhood experiences that had seemed impossible during those first overwhelming months after diagnosis. "He wants to be a nurse when he grows up," David added. "He says he wants to help other kids the way you helped him. We tell everyone at the diabetes support group about you. There are at least 6 families there who specifically requested to have their children treated at this hospital because of your reputation." Kate watched William's reaction carefully, noting how he studied each photograph with the same attention he gave to medical charts. This was what he would miss most, she realized. Not the medical procedures or administrative responsibilities, but these ongoing relationships with families whose lives had intersected with his during their most vulnerable moments. After the Martinez family left, promising to keep in touch and send updates about Miguel's progress, William sat quietly for several minutes. Kate could see him processing the weight of the connection they had just shared, filing it away with thousands of similar memories accumulated over his career. "That's what makes this job worth all the difficult days," he said eventually, "knowing that the work we do here ripples out into the world in ways we might never fully understand. Miguel will remember kindness and competence when he thinks about healthcare. His parents will advocate for better pediatric services because they experienced what's possible when things are done right." The observation struck Kate as particularly profound. She had always focused on the immediate impact of their work, helping a child feel less afraid, supporting parents through crisis, ensuring proper medical care. But William saw the longer view, understanding how their daily interactions shaped attitudes and expectations that would influence healthcare experiences for years to come. As the evening shift began arriving for duty, Kate realized with a jolt that William's time was nearly over. In just 2 hours, he would walk out of the hospital for the final time as an employee. The thought filled her with an unexpected panic, as if she were about to lose not just a colleague but a safety net she hadn't fully appreciated until now. The changing of the guard brought its own poignant moments. Nurses from the evening shift stopped by to say goodbye, sharing quick stories about lessons William had taught them or expressing gratitude for his mentorship. Even staff members who hadn't worked directly with him knew his reputation and wanted to acknowledge his contributions to the hospital's culture. Sarah Kim, a relatively new nurse who had joined the team just 6 months earlier, approached hesitantly. "Mr. William," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I know I haven't worked with you very long, but you made me feel welcome here when I was really struggling to fit in. The advice you gave me about trusting my instincts while staying humble, it changed how I approach every shift." William smiled warmly at the young woman, remembering her first few weeks when she had seemed overwhelmed by the complexity of pediatric nursing. "Sarah, you have wonderful instincts and genuine compassion. Never doubt that. The technical skills will continue to improve with experience, but the heart you bring to this work, that's something special." Kate observed this exchange with growing understanding. William's influence extended far beyond the patients and families he had directly served. He had helped shape the professional development of dozens of nurses over the years, creating a multiplier effect that would continue long after his retirement. The culture of compassion and excellence that characterized the pediatric ward had been largely cultivated through his example and guidance. Dr. Chen joined them as the evening settled in, carrying a small wrapped box. "This is from the entire medical staff," she explained to William. "It's not much, but we wanted you to have something to remember us by." Inside the box was a beautiful sterling silver stethoscope, engraved with his name and years of service. But what moved William most was the accompanying card, signed by every doctor who had worked with him over the past decade. Their messages were brief but heartfelt, acknowledging not just his clinical competence but his role in creating an environment where collaborative care flourished. "You've been the bridge between medical and nursing staff," Dr. Chen explained. "Your ability to communicate effectively with both sides, to advocate for patients while supporting medical decisions. It's made all of our jobs easier and our care more effective." The recognition clearly touched William deeply. Throughout his career, he had often found himself mediating between different perspectives, helping families understand medical recommendations, while ensuring doctors appreciated the emotional and practical challenges families faced. It was delicate work that required both clinical knowledge and interpersonal skills. As the hospital settled into its evening rhythm, Kate found herself walking the halls with William one final time. They moved slowly, stopping at each patient room where William checked on children he had been caring for during his last weeks. Even though the evening shift had officially taken over, he couldn't resist ensuring that each child was comfortable and that any concerns from the day had been properly addressed. In room 237, 4-year-old Lily was recovering from appendix surgery. She had been particularly anxious about the procedure, having had a previous traumatic experience at another hospital. William had spent considerable time building trust with her over the past few days, using simple explanations and allowing her to examine his stethoscope and other equipment before any procedures. "Mr. William," Lily called out excitedly when she saw him in the doorway. "Look, I can sit up all by myself now," she demonstrated proudly, her small face beaming with accomplishment despite the obvious discomfort from her incision. "That's wonderful progress," William replied, approaching her bedside with the same gentle manner he used with all his young patients. "Are you remembering to take deep breaths like we practiced? That helps your body heal faster." Lily nodded seriously and demonstrated the breathing exercises William had taught her, counting to 10 with each inhale and exhale. Her mother, who had been extremely worried about the surgery, watched with obvious relief as her daughter interacted confidently with the medical staff. "He's been amazing with her," Mrs. Patterson told Kate quietly. "Lily was terrified of doctors after what happened at our previous hospital, but Mr. William made her feel safe again. She actually looks forward to his visits now." Kate understood the significance of that transformation. Children who developed fear and mistrust of medical professionals early in life often carried those anxieties into adulthood, potentially avoiding necessary care or experiencing unnecessary stress during medical procedures. William's patient approach had not only helped Lily heal physically, but had also preserved her trust in healthcare providers. As they continued their rounds, Kate noticed how William took extra time with each family, ensuring smooth transitions to the evening staff and providing detailed information about any special considerations for overnight care. His thoroughness reflected the deep sense of responsibility he felt for every child under his care, even on his final day. In the neonatal intensive care unit, they visited baby James, who had been born 10 weeks premature. His parents, first-time mothers Lisa and Rachel, had been terrified by the complexity of NICU protocols and the fragility of their son. William had become their primary source of comfort and information, explaining each procedure and helping them understand how to bond with their baby, despite the intimidating array of tubes and monitors. "We brought something for you," Lisa said, producing a small photo album from her bag. "We've been documenting James's progress, and we wanted you to have copies of these pictures. You've been such an important part of his journey." The photo showed James's remarkable development over the past month, from a tiny, vulnerable infant to a growing baby who was beginning to gain weight and breathe more independently. In several pictures, William appeared alongside the family, his presence clearly providing comfort and reassurance during what could have been an overwhelming experience. You helped us believe he would be okay when we couldn't see past our fear, Rachel added, her voice thick with emotion. Every time we felt hopeless, you found ways to show us the positive signs we were missing. You taught us how to be parents to a premature baby. William accepted their gift with obvious emotion, understanding that these photos represented not just medical progress, but a family's journey through crisis, toward hope and healing. These were the moments that had sustained him through nearly 3 decades of demanding work, witnessing families discover their own strength and resilience with proper support and guidance. As they left the NICU, Kate realized that William's influence extended beyond individual patient care to broader systemic improvements. His advocacy for family-centered care had helped shape hospital policies that made it easier for parents to be involved in their children's treatment. His input had led to changes in visiting hours, family sleeping arrangements, and communication protocols that had improved the experience for countless families. The final stop on their impromptu rounds was the pediatric oncology unit, where William had spent considerable time throughout his career. The specialized skills required for caring for children with cancer had made him particularly valuable to this department, and many families had specifically requested his involvement in their children's care. Tonight, the unit was quieter than usual, but they stopped to check on 12-year-old Amanda, who was midway through chemotherapy treatment for lymphoma. She had been one of William's patients for several months, and he had developed a special relationship with her family during their difficult journey. Amanda was awake, reading a book by the soft light of her bedside lamp. Despite the effects of her treatment, the hair loss, fatigue, and other side effects, she maintained a remarkably positive attitude that had inspired everyone who met her. "Mr. William," she called softly, careful not to disturb other patients. "Mom told me today is your last day. I made this for you." She produced a carefully crafted friendship bracelet in bright colors, the kind typically exchanged between school friends. "I want you to remember that you helped me be brave," Amanda explained as William accepted the bracelet with obvious emotion. "When I was really scared about losing my hair, you told me that being brave doesn't mean not being afraid. It means doing what you need to do even when you're scared." That helped me so much. Kate watched William tie the bracelet around his wrist, knowing he would treasure this simple gift as much as any formal recognition. Amanda's words captured something essential about his approach to pediatric nursing, his ability to reframe frightening experiences in ways that empowered children, rather than overwhelming them. Amanda's mother, Patricia, joined them at the bedside, carrying her own emotional weight. "You've been our anchor through this whole experience," she told William. "When the doctors gave us Amanda's diagnosis, I thought our world was ending. But you helped us understand that childhood cancer isn't a death sentence anymore. It's a challenge that families face together with the right support and treatment." The conversation continued for several minutes, with Amanda and her mother sharing stories about how William's guidance had helped them navigate the complex world of pediatric oncology. His explanations of treatment protocols, his connections to support resources, and his steady presence during frightening procedures had made an impossible situation manageable. As they prepared to leave Amanda's room, Kate reflected on the profound responsibility that came with pediatric nursing. These families entrusted their most precious relationships to the hospital staff, depending on professionals like William not just for medical expertise, but for emotional support during their most vulnerable moments. The weight of that trust was something William had carried gracefully throughout his career, never taking for granted the privilege of being invited into families' most intimate struggles and celebrations. Kate wondered if she would develop that same sense of sacred responsibility, that ability to remain present and compassionate, even when faced with heartbreaking situations on a daily basis. As William's final hour approached, Kate felt a growing sense of urgency mixed with deep sadness. The pediatric ward had been his professional home for nearly 3 decades, and tomorrow morning it would operate without his steady presence for the first time in most staff members' memory. The thought seemed almost impossible to process. They returned to the nurses' station to find a small crowd gathering quietly. Word had spread through the hospital that William's shift was ending, and colleagues from various departments had come to offer their personal farewells. The scene was informal and intimate, Exactly the kind of goodbye Kate knew William would prefer over any elaborate ceremony. Dr. Martinez from the emergency department approached first, carrying a manila folder filled with what appeared to be letters. "These are from families whose children you've cared for over the years," he explained. "We've been collecting them for months whenever former patients' families called or visited. They all wanted to make sure you knew how much your care meant to them." William accepted the folder with trembling hands, clearly overwhelmed by the gesture. Kate watched as he carefully opened it, revealing dozens of handwritten notes, printed emails, and even some drawings from young patients. The collection represented years of gratitude that had been quietly accumulating, testimonials to the lasting impact of his compassionate care. One letter immediately caught his attention, written in the careful handwriting of someone unaccustomed to formal correspondence. It was from Carlos Rivera, whose daughter Maria had been treated for severe burns 3 years earlier following a house fire. Kate remembered the case well. Maria had required multiple surgeries and months of painful recovery, during which William had become a constant source of comfort for the entire family. "My English is not so good, but I want you to know that you saved more than my daughter's body," the letter read. "You saved our hope when we thought God had forgotten us. Maria is 15 now and wants to study medicine because of you. She says she wants to help families like you helped ours. You changed our whole family's future with your kindness." Kate saw William's eyes fill with tears as he read, and she felt her own emotions rising to the surface. This was why they had chosen nursing, not for recognition or gratitude, but for the profound privilege of making a difference during people's most vulnerable moments. Yet receiving this kind of feedback reminded them both of the sacred nature of their work. More colleagues continued to arrive, each bringing their own memories and expressions of gratitude. Nancy from the pharmacy shared how William had always taken time to explain medication changes to families, ensuring they understood not just what to give their children, but why. Tom from physical therapy talked about how William's careful attention to patient comfort had made their rehabilitation sessions more effective. Even Mr. Peterson, the hospital's longtime janitor, made an appearance. His relationship with William had developed over years of late-night conversations during quiet shifts, when they were often the only two people awake in the pediatric ward. "You always treated me like family," he told William simply. "Made me feel like my work mattered too, keeping this place clean and safe for the kids." The observation touched Kate deeply, because it revealed another dimension of William's character, his genuine respect for every person who contributed to the hospital's mission, regardless of their role or position. She had noticed over the years how he made a point of learning everyone's name, asking about their families, and expressing appreciation for their work. As the informal gathering continued, Kate found herself studying the faces around her, realizing that William had somehow touched each person's professional development in meaningful ways. He had been a mentor to some, a collaborator to others, and a source of inspiration to all. His influence had rippled through the entire hospital culture, creating an environment where compassionate care was not just encouraged but modeled daily. Dr. Chen approached Kate quietly during a lull in the conversations. "I have something special to show him," she said, producing her tablet computer. "The hospital administration has been tracking patient satisfaction scores for the pediatric ward over the past 5 years. I thought William should see the numbers before he leaves." The data was remarkable. Patient families consistently rated their experience in the pediatric ward among the highest in the entire hospital system. Comments frequently mentioned specific staff members by name, with William appearing more often than any other individual. Families praised not just the medical care but the emotional support, communication, and overall feeling of being cared for as whole people rather than just patients. "These scores have helped us secure additional funding for pediatric programs," Dr. Chen explained. "The administration recognizes that our reputation in the community is largely built on the kind of care William has modeled. His approach has become the standard we expect from all staff members." When Dr. Chen shared these findings with William, his response was characteristically humble. "Those scores reflect the entire team's work," he said. "I may have been here longer than most, but every person on this ward contributes to the experience families have here." Kate recognized this as typical William behavior, deflecting credit while acknowledging others' contributions. But she also knew that his leadership and example had been instrumental in creating the collaborative, patient-centered culture that produced such outstanding results. As 10:30 p.m. approached, the official end of William's final shift, the crowd began to thin out naturally. Colleagues offered final hugs and well wishes before returning to their own responsibilities. The evening was winding down, but Kate noticed that William seemed reluctant to complete his final tasks and officially end his career. She understood his hesitation. After 28 years of purposeful work, of being needed and valued, of making a tangible difference in people's lives, the transition to retirement would require a fundamental adjustment in identity and daily routine. William had defined himself largely through his role as a pediatric nurse, and leaving that identity behind would be one of the most challenging aspects of this transition. "Are you ready to finish up your paperwork?" Kate asked gently, knowing that completing his final shift notes would represent the official end of his career. William nodded slowly, settling at his familiar workstation one last time. Kate watched as he carefully reviewed each patient's status, ensuring that all necessary information was properly documented for the night shift staff. Even in these final minutes, his attention to detail and concern for continuity of care remained paramount. The documentation process took nearly 20 minutes, with William reviewing each entry multiple times to ensure accuracy and completeness. Kate realized that this methodical approach to patient care, this refusal to cut corners even when tired or pressed for time, had been one of the hallmarks of his professional excellence. When he finally saved the last electronic record and logged out of the computer system, a profound quiet settled over the nurses' station. After decades of activity at this same desk, William's professional relationship with the hospital was officially ended. Kate felt the weight of the moment, understanding that they were both witnessing the conclusion of an era in their department's history. The moment had arrived. William gathered his personal belongings from his locker, each item carrying memories of the years spent in service to the hospital's youngest patients. His coffee mug worn smooth from countless shifts, a small framed photo of his late wife, Margaret, who had supported his career choice even when it meant working holidays and missing family gatherings. A collection of thank you cards from patients' families that he kept for encouragement during difficult days. Kate walked beside him toward the elevator, both of them moving slowly as if trying to extend these final minutes together. The hospital corridors were quieter now, filled mainly with night shift staff beginning their routines. It felt surreal to think that tomorrow night William wouldn't be among them. As they reached the main lobby, Kate's carefully planned surprise began to unfold. The automatic doors opened to reveal not an empty parking lot, but dozens of people waiting in the warm evening air. Former patients' families, retired colleagues, and current staff members had gathered to send William off properly, despite his earlier protestations about not wanting any formal celebration. At the front of the group stood the Martinez family with Miguel, now healthy and confident, wearing his soccer uniform. Beside them were Amanda and her mother from the oncology unit, Amanda wrapped in a colorful blanket and beaming despite the late hour. The Santos family had driven 3 hours from their new home to be there. Their daughter Sophia, now a thriving teenager who credited William with saving her life during her premature birth. William stopped in his tracks, clearly overwhelmed by the sight of so many familiar faces. These weren't just former patients and colleagues. They were people whose lives had intersected with his during moments of crisis and healing, creating bonds that had endured long after medical treatments ended. "We couldn't let you sneak away without a proper goodbye," Kate said softly, her own emotions threatening to overwhelm her composure. "You've always said that nursing isn't about recognition, but sometimes recognition finds us anyway because people need to express their gratitude." Maria Rivera, now 15 and aspiring to medical school, stepped forward with a beautifully crafted scrapbook. "This is from all of us," she said in clear English, her confidence a stark contrast to the frightened burn victim William remembered. "We wanted you to have something that shows how many lives you've touched." The scrapbook was filled with photos, letters, and mementos from dozens of families. Each page told a story of healing, hope, and the lasting impact of compassionate care. There were pictures of former patients at graduations, weddings, and celebrations, milestones they might not have reached without William's skilled nursing and emotional support. Dr. Chen approached the microphone that had been set up for the occasion. "William, you've often said that nursing is about the difference we make when people need us most. Tonight we're here to tell you about the difference you've made in our lives, not just as patients and families, but as colleagues and friends. One by one, people stepped forward to share brief stories. Parents talked about how William's calm presence had helped them cope with their worst fears. Former colleagues described lessons they had learned from watching him work. Even some of the grown children who had been his patients years earlier spoke about how his kindness had shaped their understanding of healthcare and compassion. Miguel Martinez took the microphone with the confidence of his 12 years. "Mr. William taught me that having diabetes doesn't mean I can't do everything other kids do," he said clearly. "He showed me how to take care of myself, but more importantly, he showed me that being different doesn't make you less than anyone else. I'm going to be a nurse like him when I grow up." The crowd murmured appreciatively, and Kate saw William wipe away tears as he listened to the boy he had helped raise from a frightened, sick child into this confident young person with clear goals and dreams. Amanda, despite her ongoing treatment, had insisted on speaking as well. Her voice was soft but determined as she addressed the crowd. "When I first got sick, I thought my life was over. Mr. William taught me that being sick doesn't mean you stop living. It just means you learn to be strong in different ways. He helped me see that I could still have dreams and plans, even while fighting cancer." The testimonials continued for nearly an hour, each one revealing another facet of William's impact on the community. Kate listened with growing amazement, realizing that she had only seen a fraction of the lives he had touched throughout his career. The ripple effects of his compassionate care extended far beyond what she had witnessed during her own years working alongside him. When the formal speeches concluded, something unexpected happened. Without any prompting or organization, people began to line up to give William personal hugs goodbye. The line stretched across the parking lot, including not just the speakers but dozens of others who had come simply to express their gratitude in person. Kate watched as William embraced each person, often engaging in brief personal conversations that showed he remembered them individually. Despite the years that had passed, his remarkable memory for names, faces, and personal details had been one of his greatest professional strengths, making every family feel uniquely important during their time at the hospital. The process took nearly another hour, with each hug representing a completed circle of care and gratitude. Kate found herself deeply moved by the genuine affection displayed between William and these families. This wasn't mere professional courtesy. These were real relationships that had been forged during shared experiences of vulnerability and healing. As the crowd finally began to disperse, Kate realized that her own moment of goodbye had arrived. Throughout the evening, she had been so focused on facilitating others' farewells that she hadn't prepared for this personal moment of separation from her mentor and friend. They stood facing each other in the hospital parking lot, both understanding the significance of this transition. William would go home to begin his retirement, while Kate would return tomorrow to begin her new role as head nurse. The continuity of care would be maintained, but the nature of their professional relationship was ending forever. "I don't know how to say goodbye to you," Kate admitted, her voice barely steady. "You've been so much more than a colleague to me. You've been my teacher, my guide, my safety net when I wasn't sure I could handle the hard cases. I don't know how to do this job without you." William's embrace was warm and strong, conveying years of mutual respect and affection. When he spoke, his voice carried the same gentle wisdom that had comforted countless families over the decades. "Kate, you're not losing me," he said firmly. "You're gaining the confidence to trust everything I've already taught you. Every decision you make, every family you comfort, every crisis you handle, you'll do it with skills and instincts we've developed together over the years. I'll always be part of how you approach this work." The hug lasted several minutes, both of them understanding that this moment marked not just the end of William's career, but the beginning of Kate's full independence as a nursing leader. When they finally separated, Kate felt a strange mixture of sadness and determination, grief for what was ending, but also excitement for what lay ahead. As William's car pulled out of the parking lot for the final time, Kate stood watching until his taillights disappeared into the night. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new patients, new families in crisis who would need the same compassionate care that William had provided for so many years. But tonight had shown her something profound about the lasting impact of their work. The dozens of people who had gathered to honor William represented not just individual cases of successful treatment, but a community transformed by the experience of receiving truly compassionate healthcare. Their gratitude would ripple forward, influencing their own relationships with medical professionals and their expectations for how healthcare should be delivered. Kate walked back toward the hospital entrance, knowing that her own career would be measured not just by the medical care she provided, but by the relationships she built and the hope she offered during family's darkest moments. William's legacy would live on through her work and the work of all the nurses he had trained and inspired over the years. The automatic doors closed behind her as she returned to the pediatric ward, ready to carry forward the tradition of excellence and compassion that William had established. His retirement marked the end of an era, but it also represented the beginning of a new chapter in which his influence would continue to shape the lives of countless families for years to come.